What's important to note about standards is that they aren't the same. They don't represent the same work or the same thinking for every subject area, and we need to recognize and call that out. If we take a look here at these two standards, we have a Common Core Math standard and we have a Phys Ed standard. The Common Core Math standard 3NBT1 use place value understanding to round whole numbers to the nearest 10 or 100. We could sit and develop an item, an assessment item, a question that would help us measure students' ability to attain the standard. It would be pretty simple for us to design a question that would get after that student learning and would let us know have they or have they not met this standard. If we take a look at the Phys Ed standard, which is students will perform basic motor and manipulative skills, they will attain competency in a variety of physical activities and proficiency in a few select complex motor and sports activities, we soon recognize that creating an assessment, developing an assessment of that standard is going to take a different. We will quickly recognize that assessment of this standard would take a different route. It wouldn't be as simple to say we can design one assessment item that will measure students' ability to reach this standard. And we also need to have conversation about what does it mean? What are the basic motor and manipulative skills? What does competency mean? What's a variety? And what does proficiency mean? So there's a lot to be discussed around this standard. It's not as clear as the math standard that is set next to. The important point that I want to call out around this is that the work of aligning assessments to standards is not the same for everyone. And each standard has a different amount of clarity to it, and each standard is going to demand a little bit of a different thinking when it comes to assessment development. When we take a look at the standards, the teaching standards, which kind of represent what teachers need to know and be able to do, if we take a look at the New York State teaching standards, what we know is that it gives us a lens to look at our practice and where we need to go in terms of our own growth. If we take a look at element 2.4 of the New York State teaching standards, it asks that teachers establish goals and expectations for all students that are aligned with learning standards. So we want to be sure that we are, in fact, taking time to reflect on goals and expectations for students as they relate to those standards. We also notice that in this teaching standard, it asks that we allow for multiple pathways to achievement. This again reinforces the fact that the standards were in place to be the floor. What is it that all students should know and be able to do? Those mark the non-negotiables for students, and we are charged, or we are challenged, to create multiple pathways to achieve those standards. So when we reflect on our assessments, it's important that we take a look at when we reflect on our assessments, it's important to note not that I need to assess what I'm doing, but rather I need to assess what those standards are asking. And once I take a look at the standards and say, am I assessing these standards that may impact what we're doing, we need to reflect on our assessments in a way that we need to be sure that when we take a look at our assessments, I invite you, as you reflect on your assessments, to be sure that those assessments are measuring the standards. Because I think it's often we can begin to assess what we do. I invite you, as you reflect on your assessments, to ask yourself if you are assessing the standards that are aligned to your course.